Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We can.
Hello.
Hello. Can we have a big round of applause for Connie, who's joined us from Austin, Texas? Thank you so much, Connie, for joining us. It's 6:40 a.m. And you look as awake as if it's the afternoon. So thank you so much for joining us. Just to introduce Connie, or Dr. Konstanze, Alex, for people that don't know her. Connie leads B2B influencer relations for Dell, as well as hosting the Luminaries podcast, exploring how technology drives human progress by touching lives. Been with Dell for 11 years, been running the global influencer relations for about 4 years now, and she's also the co-advisor for a PhD student in the Universidade do Minho in Portugal, which I probably pronounced really badly, so please edit that out. But she's working on some really cool projects with the role of social media technology in the innovation process in public and government life. So based in Austin, I thought that everyone in the UK and EMEA can learn a lot from American, US-centric global programs for people that have been running this for many, many years. So I just wanted to pass it over to you, Connie, and thank you so much for sharing your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for that very kind introduction, Tim, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for inviting me, Tim, to this summit to just talk about influencers, really my favorite topic. So since we have a limited amount of time, I was just going to go through really quickly what we are doing, what our objectives are at Dell and Dell Technologies for influencer marketing. I was really lucky to be almost there at the birth of this area of expertise of this industry trend, which sort of sprung out of social and social media when it was first used. And it was a long journey. This journey continues on right now as we are all together defining what it really is, and it's an evolution. So I don't see it finished by any margin. What I do always to explain to folks really quickly, and feel free to use this, what influencer relations, influencer marketing is, I equate it with its older, more mature cousins of analyst relations and public relations. So when I present a slide and I want to show influencer relations on the slide, I have 3 building blocks to increase corporate reputation, to establish and maintain relationships with third parties, to always increase the share of voice in the topics we prioritize. I present, we have one leg, we have analyst relations with a full team behind it, working with the analysts on briefing them, on informing them, on exchanging information, on getting this third-party validation, endorsements, and opinions. Third party is the important word. Then, of course, we have public relations. Everybody is super familiar with that. We work with journalists to accomplish the same thing, for a different type of content producer and opinion. Now, influencer relation to me is that third leg growing stronger and stronger. Those are the people that are not covered in the analyst relations, in public relations. So those are the people originally who had large and trusted followings online and had engagement. But I think we have come a long way from just looking at online metrics to really tier the influencers from those maybe that their online presence with a trusted audience is large, to the other end of the spectrum where we have peer influencers, niche influencers, which I think as we are growing this particular field all together in the industry have become extremely important. What also plays in right now, just like the other fields, is offline engagement of these influencers at keynotes, at presentations, on the shop floor when they talk to groups, in forums, and so forth. So all of these pieces really fall together, and only once we achieve really being accepted as equals to analysts and public relations, I think, are we getting to where we want to be? Because that, of course, is associated with budget and with executive visibility. So what are the objectives? I just kind of described to you the way we define influencer relations. And then, of course, it's always important to be very, very clear on how you define influencer. And I can talk to 5 people in the room, and everybody would have a different sort of definition of what an influencer is. And there I have to thank everybody in this room and Tim with his Onalytica team for really driving this forward. So we define an influencer as an individual who has influence over the perception of the target customers, is a trusted expert, has an engaged, loyal following that could be large or small, depending on the audience we want to address, and most importantly, can motivate action amongst their audience. Ultimately, all of us are looking to drive business goals with influencer programs, but the question is really how we do this. Here at Dell, and I'm looking at the questions Tim asked me to sort of respond to, and Tim, stop me when I'm going over time.
It's fantastic, Connie. Keep on going.
Okay. One really important thing is with influencer relations is because often it's not that clearly defined as I'm talking with a journalist, I'm talking with an industry analyst, I'm talking with an influencer who at this point could be many things, but has in common that they are influential over a particular type of audience to help us increase SOV with brand reputation, raising awareness. The one thing that is incredibly important is building relationship with individuals and making the value creation mutual. What I mean by that is obviously we have business goals that we want to achieve by engaging third parties such as influencers. But what do they get out of it? If you start thinking in terms of the old, very old way of celebrity endorsements, I guess the value proposition was very clear. I pay you a lot of money, you hit the tennis racket for me and show my product. And this is just one example. So, of course, what we're doing today is much more refined. We define our business goals and we categorize them to a level of detail, just like AR does, just like PR does. You have, and you define your audiences. Which audience do you want to reach? Do you want to reach a CIO, CXO audience with thought leadership material? Or do you want to reach an audience of an IT manager who sits in a data center in a university or in a small business? You have very different influencers to address this audience, particularly those who have earned their trust. The minute I present an influencer to an IT manager audience who doesn't know the technology down 500 feet, I lose. Okay, so what am I providing as value add to the influencers? I give them exposure, I brief them on content before others get it. And when I mean content, that may be storage for Dell Technologies, that may be storage announcements in a pre-briefing call. So they get that before others get. I give them access to executives at events, which is huge. I provide them special information that nobody else gets. But I also give them regular access to executives. I invite them to events. I tour them around the show floor so they understand what we are about. So on the level of a mega influencer, for example, we are working with Adrian Grenier. He's the actor in Entourage, but so many more things. Just a little word about that. That's a very special relationship, and there's one of those in all of technologies, maybe two. So that's not the norm. But what we look even in these mega influencers is the alignment of values. So Adrian Grenier also has to believe in what we're doing. We have to believe in what he is doing. He is, for example, actively working on cleaning the oceans of plastics. What do we do, and how do we have programs that align for that? To his vision there is, we have begun initiatives to recycle ocean plastics and create packaging out of it. So there's a natural alignment between what we want from a CSR perspective and what he wants and his company and his foundation wants. So that can go across every single level. Mutual benefit has to be part of it, and money is not the benefit we're looking for. So there are influencers, as you may know, that get compensated for their time and expertise, which is, I think, a model that's evolving right now. And it's really, really important because I can't expect them to do this for free. If I invite them to an event, have them speak on several panels, give them opportunities, they prepare, they use their expertise. That's what I'm compensating for some. Never for the opinion, never for a fake endorsement. That is a rule that we have established very early on, and that will never change. Once you compromise on that, you lose. I think the influencer loses credibility, and the brand who works with the influencer loses that credibility as well. And that's the worst thing that can happen with an influencer program. So let me see. I kind of shared what works well and building relationships. Okay, let's talk a little bit about building relationships. My best practice for the program that I'm leading is you gotta meet the influencer for a first touch point. And usually what we try to do is invite new influencers to events. Obviously, we have conversations with them ahead of time, but invite them to events to just observe. Not really to do engagements because we don't know each other yet, but let them check us out on this first date in person, get a sense of who this person is, get a sense of what the interests are when you actually see them, and then start building a relationship that will evolve, increasing depth over months, sometimes years. So my best influencers right now, I've worked with 4 or 5 years, and I can rely on them. They are there for me. They know what to expect. And that gives you a really good basis to start inviting new influencers. So we have our biggest customer event coming up in a couple of weeks now, which is why I get up at this time. Anyway, so Tim, this was not an early morning for me really, because going up to an event, that's just the way it is. Yeah. We invite new influencers and expose them to our point of view, to our solution, to everything we have to offer in their area of interest. So I'm not going to send my storage expert influencer to a high-level marketing session or event, because that would show him that I didn't pay attention to what he or she is actually doing. But we customize their experience to expose them to the areas that they are interested in. That means knowing them. That means looking into the analytics before we invite them. We know where they talk. We know what their topics are. And Onalytica is actually helping us a great deal. So we're making kind of a leap at this point in time in collaboration, because you can't go without knowing all the statistics, being really clear on what is important for you, for each influencer, so that you make sure you invite the right influencers. And then we meet them and talk and build this relationship one-on-one, little by little. Obviously, at some point you have to scale. One person can't do it anymore. So you need help. So we are engaging with Top Rank and a digital marketing agency who helped me to scale the program so that we can be the older cousin like AR and like PR, only obviously better since we're influencer relations. So Tim asked me what social media channels have been most effective. So it is Twitter, it is LinkedIn for large parts of our audience. So if I divide my program into which audiences I want to address, I have the CIO, CXO audience. There's a Twitter and LinkedIn. Then I have the IT manager audience. It's again Twitter, but it's also forums and smaller communities that you have to be in, that you have to drive. If I, on the other side, have business to consumer audiences. We divide them into, technology interest families, into video makers for our workstation. So that's very, very different types of influencers and very different activations for influence. So across Dell, we have 7 different audiences at this point, one of them being gaming. I didn't mention that. Once again, very different audience than our CIO, CXO audience, whom we want to talk about digital transformation, IT transformation, security transformation, and so forth. So let's say, what's my advice, and I want to actually make this a conversation and open it up to questions, Tim. The one best practice that I've known, build the relationship, create mutual value for the influencer and for yourself, and be able to measure this. And that's the hard part. And another best practice in measuring the engagement is you're never done. There's so much data that you can slice and dice, and you should slice and dice this data, because at the end of the day, to justify your influencer program, you have to provide the data. What did I achieve? What KPIs do I have? And I think we are just kind of scratching the surface of what we can do. It goes way beyond, of course, the reach and the vanity metrics that are so easy to do, into really engagement and value metrics. And also, one of the most important things, what insights do you get from the data so that next time you can be a little bit better? And that is my goal, to never have an engagement that's just as good as the last one, but you always improve. So Tim, I think I'm going to stop here and take questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Connie, you can't see all the audience, but everyone's been fascinated and listening to every single word intently. So I didn't want to stop you on that, but I just want to open it up to a few questions from the audience. And does anyone have a question for Connie?
Questions or comments, even.
Or comments. Well, I can kick it off. A lot of people here are running EMEA programs or just UK programs, and not all of them have a job title, Global Influencer Relations or Influencer Marketing Manager. It's part of their day-to-day job, which might be 10% focus or 5% or up to 30% potentially. So what advice would you give them when this is relatively new and they're just starting out? And they need to prove the business case and get some relationships started?
Yeah. So my advice really goes back to kind of what we have done, how we got into it. It was at first via the PR managers. If you are not in PR, if you're in marketing, this would be a little bit different. And I would advise you to go to your PR team, go to your AR team, and start there. And find out how these relationships are in your company culture, how the relationships are managed. Check if those are one-on-one and start small. There's sometimes the pressure to, I got to find 15 influencers right now for this marketing campaign. That's probably, in my opinion, not the right way. What you want to do is you start building your own knowledge about this by working with your PR team, working with your AR team, and slowly starting to build. It's very difficult if you only have 10% of your job free for influencer. I would say if you only have 10%, focus on 1 or 2 influencers with whom you want to build a relationship at a time. See how that goes. See what measuring you can get from that. And see how you can, support your business goal, because ultimately what I said in the beginning, your business goals drive the influencer engagement. I don't know if this was helpful, but looking to your PR and AR colleagues is probably an easy, low-hanging fruit that everybody can do.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. Sometimes it's PR and AR. Sometimes if you're in marketing, maybe looking at content marketing or the teams in and around to see how they're approaching content creation, because you might be able to add influencers and amplify the content. Or if you're more in influencer relations, then PR and AR might be a good reference point. Does anyone have a question for Connie in the audience? Alistair is over here. So we got one question just coming in a second. Connie.
Okay.
I'm sorry that you can't see the audience, but everyone is really engaged. So we'll send you the video of how engaged they were during your presentation.
That would
can
be
you hear
fantastic.
Me, Can Connie hear me?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So,
hello.
it's great to hear you talking about how influencer relations needs to be treated on a par with PR and AR. But I know in many organizations there are lines about who should control the relationship with a certain individual. And one of the challenges is that now media organizations have changed, and it's not the case that someone's full-time working for a publication and it's obvious that they should be working with the PR team perhaps. And a lot of influencers will maybe write content on multiple publications. So how do you decide in Dell when you've got someone who might be, an analyst in 1 week and then writing an article in a major publication the next week, but then an influencer maybe is their day job perhaps? How do you decide who really should own those relationships?
It's a fantastic question. And we are just now coming to this, not realization, but we are beginning to create processes for this. I have an example. Let's say I take Daniel Newman. He is a researcher. He is an analyst. He is an influencer. And so traditionally we have classified him as an influencer just because he hadn't been captured by the AR team. And we have to have this open dialogue, of course, because we don't want to bombard one person from several sides. So we have to coordinate. Most important thing is, again, tie out with your AR, tie out with your PR. Does anybody in my company already have a relationship? And then how do I deal with this? So we have now a new word we call gray zoners. And all that it means is that we leverage this ability of the influencer across. Example, Daniel Newman, he's coming as an influencer to our biggest event for me, but at the same time, he is engaged in a research project for the AR team. So my counterpart in AR and I work together and see, let's not be as rigid as we used to be, because some people just cross this line. So let's work together and basically partner with the influencer where it makes sense. Research project for AR at this point, speaking engagement at event for influencers at this point. But still very coordinated, and that's the biggest part. So you kind of have to establish everything, because once you start doing this without alerting your colleagues that may also have a relationship, then it becomes uncomfortable and awkward for the influencers. Like, who's telling me what? So you have to be clear that these are lines. But I think it works if the influencer, if this person fulfills both, being an analyst and being a content creator and socially very savvy. And actually more of these people that are across these lines are popping up, which is great.
Fantastic. Do we have another question from the audience? I think one last one.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, yes.
Hi, Connie. It's Petya from NetApp. I think we probably connected over the Influence Marketing Council.
Yep.
With John and Kat. And first of all, I just want to say...
Yes.
Hi. Just want to say thanks for the commitment. I think it's really impressive that you're awake at that early time and sharing this with us. So my question to you is, as one of our veterans in the industry, pioneers when it comes to influencer relations, what changed when you started out? And how is it perceived now, especially when it comes to senior leadership? Do they see the value? I know it's been a difficult battle for everyone who's been like you, who started in the very beginning. So if you can share a little bit about your tips, what changed, and what your advice would be to people who are just starting out to have that conversation with their leadership and their sales teams. Thank you.
Yeah, first off, great to hear you. And I'll see you in that next council, hopefully with Tim. I think Tim is on this week, right?
Yeah.
Excellent. A very marked development was social media popped up, was at different times centralized team, then moved into the business, is now pervasive, is now everywhere. And with that, social influencers popped up. But all that really meant was people who all had a large following, who began talking about social as a marketing strategy tactic. So initially we focused on the influencers who were beginning to garner great audiences on Twitter. You could see them grow. You could see their expertise about how to do social grow. So our first foray was really working with these social influencers who talked about the value of social, had a large audience when we were establishing a social business leadership ourselves. Dell has always been sort of on the forefront for social. So naturally that went forward. Now that is now being reduced to a minimum because it's done. For us at least, that part is done. So we are looking into diversifying and supporting business goals, marketing goals, business unit goals, so that I'm having an influencer team that stretches from the deepest depth of storage, of server technology, of hyperconverged technology, to our efforts in corporate social responsibility, like I mentioned earlier. So and everybody in between. What was really important that we started getting more formalized around defining influencers. We have a pyramid at the top. Very few other visionaries, the tastemakers. You're Adrian Grenier, you're actor, you're somebody who is at that level. The levels we most are the two levels below that. Those are the independent thought leaders, and those are the peer influencers. Below that, we have up-and-comers. And I'm not saying below as in, it's just in the pyramid when I picture it. We have up-and-comers. So find somebody who is just sort of coming them, track them, work with them a little bit and see that you get a relationship going before they explode on the scene. And then we have, of course, our employee advocates. So to your question is the evolution of your program has to go on. It's perfectly fine to start where your business needs you to start. Maybe that's making the leadership understand what social can bring to your company. And once you're there, then leadership understands that. And then you diversify little by little into areas that you're comfortable. Then you bring in your marketing teams. I sit in global communications, so that's the process works for us. I bring in marketing. Where can I help? And now I'm in the fortunate situation that everybody knows for a large event, the teams come and say, we'd like to have a panel on native cloud. Do you have an influencer? And I say, yes, I do. And here we go. And so we insert the influencers in the business, but you have to get there. You can't start there. Does that make sense?
Great. I think that's fantastic. Connie, thank you so much for presenting. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but that's been a wonderful overview and I think provided some great inspiration for the group. So let's give Connie a big round of applause. Thank you. Thank you very much, Connie, and best of luck with your event.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.